Okay.
So good morning, good afternoon, shalom lekulam, and welcome everyone to today's art history seminar here at the Bar-Ilan University. It's a pleasure to see you all here again as we continue our department seminar from the first semester. Our focus on Jewish art invites us to explore not only visual expression, but also the cultural, historical context that shape it. Today's seminar offers us another opportunity to deepen that understanding and engage with new perspectives. And I would like to thank our speakers and guests and to be here with us in this not in these special days here in Israel. And Zvi will introduce Laura. So please, Zvi.
Yes, thank you, Marianne. Laura Marie Feigen is an associate lecturer at the Courtauld Institute of Art, where she also completed her PhD. Her dissertation, Material Witnesses, the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible and Migrating Hebrew Manuscript, examines the movement of Hebrew manuscripts in Europe between 1290 and 1550, a period that saw mass movement of Jews and their manuscripts due to expulsion and persecution, using the Rothschild Pentateuch and the Wittenberg Volume as a central case study. The project was supported by the Consortium for Humanities and Arts in Southeast England, the Medieval Academy of America, and British Archaeological Association. In 2025, Feigen co-organized the International Symposium, Tracing Jewish Histories, the Long Lives of Medieval Hebrew Manuscripts, Judaica, and Architecture. And today, as you can see, she's going to talk about the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible and the further embellishment of Hebrew manuscript in 15th century Italy. So, sounds wonderful. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a great pleasure, and I'm looking forward to sharing this research with you. So today I'm going to speak about an illuminated Hebrew Bible created in 1296 that has moved to Italy in the 15th century, and which I've been affectionately calling the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible. My lecture today is going to focus mainly on the life of this manuscript in 15th century Italy, examining in particular a new illuminated folio it received there and the patrons who likely commissioned this edition. This illuminated folio is shown here on the introduction screen. Yet before delving into this particular moment in the manuscript's history, I'd like to situate this episode within the wider context of the manuscript's movements and material history as it stretches across 730 years from the Middle Ages to the present. Understanding the long life of this manuscript before honing in on one specific chapter is important because it demonstrates its lasting significance across historical periods as it sustained changes at the hands of different readers in the Middle Ages and beyond. Hold on, I'm just trying to change slides. There it goes. I would like to highlight at the outset that the material history of the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible between the Middle Ages and the 20th century formed the central case study of my doctoral dissertation submitted this past autumn. It's titled Material Witnesses, the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible and Migrating Hebrew Manuscripts. So I'm going to begin this lecture with an overview of the manuscript's owner history. If you'd like further detail, please do read my thesis, which should be available very shortly through the Courtauld Library. With that, I'd like to begin with an outline of the Rothschild-Wittenberg's provenance. In 1296, the scribes Elijah bar Meshullam and Elijah ben Jehiel completed a Hebrew Bible for the patron Joseph ben Joseph Martel. This Hebrew Bible has come down to us in 2 volumes. The first volume, most commonly known as the Rothschild Pentateuch, is now held at the J. Paul Getty Museum in LA and is so named because it was gifted to the Frankfurt Municipal Library by Baroness Adelaide de Rothschild in the early 20th century. This volume measures 275 by 210 millimeters and contains the 5 books of the Torah with Rashi commentary and Targum Onkelos, followed by the Haftarot, written across 584 folios. The second volume is now held at the Martin Luther Museum in Wittenberg. It measures 275 by 215 millimeters and comprises the 5 scrolls and Book of Job across 112 folios. Previous scholarship has tended to focus on the Rothschild Pentateuch. However, in this lecture, I'd like to speak about the volumes as a whole, because while the illumination I will focus on today can be found in the Rothschild Pentateuch, the bills of sale that evidence the manuscript's movement to Italy are found in the Wittenberg Volume. For this reason, in this lecture, when I speak about their life together in the 15th century, I will refer to them as the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible. It's only when I discuss their respective modern provenances that I will refer to them individually. 8 colophons can be found across the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible, often written at the end of major divisions in the text. 6 are shown here. The 2 colophons by Elijah bar Meshulam, written at the end of the Haftarah and Book of Job, indicate he completed the main text. The 6 colophons by Elijah ben Jehiel are often written in micrography and appear in pairs at the ends of Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Book of Job. His colophons state he provided the vocalization and Mizorah. Notwithstanding these 8 colophons, only that by Elijah bar Meshulam at the end of the Haftarah mentions the date the manuscript was completed. And here's a transcription and translation of that colophon. Though the colophon doesn't name a location, scholars such as Eva Fromovich and Adam Cohen have suggested the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible was made in Lorraine or another region on the border between French-speaking Tzarfat and German-speaking Ashkenaz due to the style and content of the illuminations. A localization to Eastern France is consistent with the manuscript's paleography and codicology, and is further supported by the division of the final parashah in Exodus. On this folio, the parashah Pekudei, comprised of Exodus verses 38:21 through 40:38, is divided at verse 39:32, with the word V'techel framed by an inhabited word panel. This division links the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible to a niche liturgical practice that saw Exodus verses 39:32 through 40:38 treated as an additional parashah during leap years, in order to follow the Gaonic principle that instructed the parashah B'midbar be read on the Shabbat before Shavuot. This practice is alluded to in the Maser Vitri, a halakhic text pertaining to the customs of North French Jewry compiled in the late 11th century by Simcha ben Samuel of Vitry. It is also noted in the Etz Chaim, a halakhic text pertaining to Jewish communities in England, written by Jacob ben Judah Chazan of London in 1287. I conducted a survey of Hebrew manuscripts in major collections and found the practice surviving in at least 26 other Hebrew Bibles and 1 gloss on the Hebrew Bible, several of which contain colophons noting they were made along the border between Tzarfat and Ashkenaz. This includes, for example, the well-known Polini Pentateuch, made in Polini in 1300, and a French glossary on the Hebrew Bible, copied in Delsberg in 1279. Only one of these Hebrew Bibles is from pre-expulsion England, and its division of Pekudei can be seen here. The transmission of this practice across English and French communities is a rich area, and is in fact discussed in the first chapter of my PhD, so I'd be happy to answer questions about it later. However, for now, it's enough to note that the division of Pekudei at the verse 39:32 in the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible serves as a liturgical clue to its nascence in Eastern Tzarfat. Yet the manuscript did not ultimately remain there. Unfortunately, not much is actually known about the ownership of the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible in the period immediately following its creation in 1296. There are no owner inscriptions, bills of sale, censor signatures, or other datable markers, providing clear insight into its life in the 14th and early 15th centuries. The next datable clue to its provenance can be found in a bill of sale at the end of the Book of Job, stating it was sold in 1484 by Akiva ben Ephraim Shatan to Jehiel ben Uri, called Michael Lemaitre, in the city of Mestre, near Venice. Further inscriptions indicate the manuscript remained in Italy until at least the 16th century. It was signed by a Gershon ben Moshe HaKohen Rappa, who was born in Porto and died in Vienna around 1584. His undated inscriptions can be found at the ends of Deuteronomy and Book of Job. While Gershon's inscriptions are undated, there are several birth notes at the end of the Book of Job, two of which are dated 1618 and 1623, and an inscription by a Jehiel Michael HaKohen Rappa, who signed his name as part of an acrostic at the end of the Haftarah, with the last few letters indicating a date of 1636. By the 18th century, the manuscript had come into the possession of the Casnella-Bogen family, three members of which signed their names in an inscription dated 1735. The note states that they would not sell the manuscript to any non-family members. The instruction in this no-sale agreement appears to have been followed for over 100 years, as the manuscript passed down in the Katznella-Bogen family until 1852. The provenance of the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible took a dramatic turn in 1852, when a descendant of the Katznella-Bogen family sought or perhaps needed to sell it. The scholar Zvi Hirsch-Edelman included correspondence regarding the sale of the manuscript in a hagiography he wrote on the famed Rabbi Saul Wall Katznella-Bogen, who moved from Venice to Poland in the late 16th century, where, according to historic legend, he occupied the throne of Poland for one day in 1587. In his hagiography, Edelman notes two rabbis from Galicia wrote to him in 1852 about a medieval Hebrew Bible created in 1296. They said the manuscript was from the estate of Saul Wall and was in the possession of his descendants in Linsk, now Lesko, Poland, who wished to sell it. I've paraphrased part of the letter here. It described a Pentateuch written on very good parchment. The writing is beautiful and perfect and clean, in very fine writing. The Pentateuch also includes the Targum on Keles and Rashi's commentary, and also the Mizora Magna. At the beginning of each parashah, the first word of the next one and the last word of the previous one are surrounded by illuminations. Also appended to the Pentateuch is all 5 scrolls with Rashi commentary and the Targum Sheni to the Book of Esther. The letter further noted the inscriptions, such as the bill of sale by Akiva ben Ephraim Shatan. This description indicates that the Katznella-Bogen family wished to sell a single codex created in 1296 that contained the Torah, 5 scrolls, and Book of Job. Edelman, however, does not mention to whom the manuscript was sold. Its provenance goes dark until 1905. When the manuscript re-emerged in 1905, it had been divided into its 2 present volumes. The final 112 folios, the 5 scrolls and Book of Job, had been excised and placed in a limp vellum binding. This portion, the Wittenberg Volume, made its way to the book dealer Karl Hirschman in Leipzig, who tried to sell it to the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York in 1905. When the institution declined, he placed it in his 1914 sale catalog, and it was acquired soon after by the Martin Luther Museum in Wittenberg. Meanwhile, the rest of the codex, the 5 books of the Torah and the Haftarah, was rebound in a red leather binding and is now known as the Rothschild Pentateuch. It was presented to the Frankfurt Municipal Library by Baroness Adelaide de Rothschild, also known as Baroness Edmund de Rothschild, in 1905, in May. I found newspaper clippings in the Rothschild collection at the Frankfurt University Library, which document this gift. One from the 16th of May, 1905 reads, "According to the director, the Frankfurt Municipal Library has recently received an extremely valuable edition from Frau Baronin Edmund von Rothschild in Paris. This is a richly illustrated Pentateuch manuscript created in southern Germany in 1296. A similar announcement appeared on the 26th of May, 1905, in the Jewish Chronicle. These clippings push back the earliest known record of the Rothschild Pentateuch in the Frankfurt Municipal Library from 1920 to 1905, and raise questions about whether the near simultaneous reemergence of the Rothschild Pentateuch and Wittenberg Volume in 1905 was truly coincidental. Indeed, it is unclear precisely who owned the Rothschild Pentateuch and Wittenberg Volume between 1852 and 1905, and therefore who separated them. It does seem to have been somewhat general knowledge that the Rothschild Pentateuch and Wittenberg Volume were once part of larger codices. Hersman's 1914 sale catalog, now pasted inside the Wittenberg Volume, notes it was previously part of a codex containing the Torah and Haftarot. Similarly, a description of the Rothschild Pentateuch in a catalog of manuscripts in the Frankfurt collections notes its companion Megillot volume was in the possession of Hersman in Leipzig in 1905. Yet neither describes who divided the original codex. The only clue to its whereabouts between 1852 and 1905 lies in the binding of the Rothschild Pentateuch. The Rothschild Pentateuch's parchment folios were rebound in wooden boards clad in red leather with a gold-stamped design of the Ten Commandments. The spine bears a gold-stamped scene of Rebecca and Eliezer at the well. Intriguingly, the cover design is identical to that found on a Hebrew-German translation of the Hebrew Bible titled Sefer Ketuvei HaKodesh, printed in Vienna in 1858 by Adalbert de la Tour, the behest of the British Foreign Bible Society and the Free Church of Scotland. The only clue to this shared binding is hidden in the spine of the Rothschild Pentateuch, where there is a short inscription partially covered by the fold of the letter that reads Nemsch Wien, or Nemsch Vienna. Using the Vienna address book, I identified this as Solomon Nemschitz, a bookbinder who worked in Vienna from the 1850s until his death in 1875. This binding is rendered even more intriguing by the scene of Rebecca and Eliezer at the well on the spine, which Nemschitz faithfully reproduced from a painting by Horace Vernet, exhibited in Paris in 1835. The iconography of the binding is the topic of an article I have coming out soon in Ars Judaica, so I won't spend any more time detailing the circumstances of these designs. What is key to note, however, is that the binding informs us that the Katznelli-Bogen family sought to sell the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible in 1852. It was then divided, and the Rothschild Pentateuch specifically was rebound in Vienna. It then came into the hands of Adelaide de Rothschild, who gifted it to the Frankfurt Library in 1905. The bookplate from the library noting it as from Adelaide can be seen here. The Rothschild Pentateuch remained in the Frankfurt Municipal Library's permanent collection until 1950, when it was given alongside numerous other Hebrew texts from the library's collection to a private Jewish individual living in New York with their family since 1940. The texts were given as compensation for a building their family owned that was demolished during the city's post-war rebuilding. While we don't have a list of the manuscripts given, an examination of pre-war catalogs, such as this one from 1920, in comparison with later announcements, indicates that among the manuscripts given were the Mishneh Torah, now jointly owned by the Met and Israel Museum, an Italian Esther scroll, an Italian Haggadah, and a Catalonian Hebrew Bible. These images are from exhibitions in New York in 1954 and 1989, to which the family lent its manuscripts. The Rothschild Pentateuch, in particular, passed by descent through this family until its acquisition by Getty in 2018. Looking at this slide, we can see that the movement and material history of the Rothschild Pentateuch is at once specific and also part of a wider history regarding the movement and transformation of Hebrew manuscripts, extending from the Middle Ages to the present. If we take a step back, the movement of Hebrew manuscripts can be contextualized within the wider movements of Jewish communities. This is a map showing the major expulsions of Jewish communities between 1100 and 1600. It's meant to illustrate that the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible's movement to Mestre by the 15th century must be contextualized against the backdrop of migrations of Jewish communities across Europe as a result of persecution and expulsion, as well as trade, work, and study. The 13th through 15th centuries in particular saw an unprecedented succession of mass expulsions of Jewish communities from kingdoms and urban centers in England, France, Germany, and Spain. The most well-known of these were ordered by King Edward I of England in 1290, King Philip IV of France in 1306, King Charles VI of France in 1394, and King Ferdinand and Isabella of Castile and Aragon in 1492. The movement of Jewish people as a result of these expulsions and voluntary motivations can be traced in part by the movement of Hebrew manuscripts like the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible. This map shows some of the migrations of Hebrew manuscripts in this period and is based on a data set I created for my PhD called the Migrating Hebrew Manuscript Index. The index tracks the movement of Hebrew manuscripts based on codicology, paleographical, and provenance evidence, namely bills of sale, censor signatures, and owner inscriptions, whose name, dates, and locations tell us by when and to where a manuscript moved. Now, it should be noted that the manuscripts I've mapped were chosen to augment the central case study in my dissertation, which was the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible. And therefore, the manuscripts shown are those whose material histories either paralleled or presented a counterpoint to this manuscript. It's thus by no means comprehensive, but it does provide a snapshot. Mapping these findings enables us to see how the later lives of certain Hebrew manuscripts intersect, discerning trends in the ways they were adapted and how they become part of the book trade in different regions. While the movement of Hebrew manuscripts to Italy is one of the clearest trends to emerge from this index, one can also observe movements to Portugal, Provence, and across the Mediterranean to North Africa and the Middle East. These wider migrations form the backdrop to the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible's movements and must be kept in mind as we shift our attention now to its life in the 15th century Italy. Indeed, the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible's movement to Mestre is part of a larger network of Hebrew manuscripts from Tzafat, Ashkenaz, and Sepharad that moved to Italy in this period, where they were often sold and received new decorative and textual additions at the behest of new owners. Such use and embellishment ran parallel to the production of new manuscripts and helped shape the landscape of the Hebrew book trade in 15th century Italy. So if we turn our attention back to this bill of sale, it evidences the movement of the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible to Italy by the 15th century. It states the manuscript was sold by Akiva ben Ephraim Shatan to Jehiel ben Uri, called Michael Lemaitre, in Mestre in 1484. While in Italy, the folio commencing the Parashah Nitzavim, which comprises Deuteronomy verses 29:9 through 30:20, was expertly removed and replaced with a new folio depicting Moses addressing the Israelites. There are several stylistic details that point to this being a later edition. Not only is the illustration figural, showing Moses before the Israelites in a gold-patterned robe, gesturing with his rod for emphasis, but the painting style is also more refined, replete with delicate penwork designs in which a raven-like bird sits encircled by flowers. In this, the illustration contrasts with the design of the word panels commencing the other parashot in this manuscript, which are predominantly inhabited by mythic, hybrid, and animal creatures. And you can see a juxtaposition here. The catalyst for the removal of the original 13th century folio is unclear. The surrounding folios provide no evidence of severe water or fire damage that would necessitate a replacement. The expert manner in which the new folio was incorporated into the binding, with the original leaf carefully excised and a new one expertly inserted into the seam of the quire, supports the idea that this was a deliberate professional commission, not a repair. Given this, I'd like to spend the rest of my time today proposing that it was likely one of the 15th century owners, possibly Akiva Shatan, who sold the manuscript in 1484, who wished to incorporate a new illumination, and thus commissioned one of the more well-reputed Jewish artists of the day, Joel ben Simeon. Scholars such as Evelyn Cohen and Sharon Lieberman Mintz have convincingly attributed this folio to Joel ben Simeon, a Jewish scribe artist born in Cologne and trained in Bonn, who made his way to Italy after the Jews were expelled from Bonn in 1445. Similar figures can be found in several pictorial programs attributed to Joel, such as the Rothschild Haggadah, made around 1450 in Italy, and a copy of Levi ben Gershom's commentary on the Pentateuch, originally made in Avignon in 1429, and which later moved to Italy, where Joel added drawings of the sacrifice of Isaac and temple instruments. The Haggadah in particular shows Moses in a similarly decorated robe, wielding his staff as he parts the Red Sea, though one might also find similarities between these trees and Moses' staff and Abraham's knife. These three manuscripts are part of Joel's prolific oeuvre. He not only made manuscripts for Ashkenazi and Italian Jewish clients, but he also collaborated with Jewish and Christian artists, including Mir Yaffa and Johannes Baumler. He has come down in history as one of the most well-known and identifiable Jewish scribe artists from this period, due to the number of surviving manuscripts that were signed by him or that have been attributed to him on the basis of his clearly recognizable style and iconographic programs. There are around 35 manuscripts to date made in Germany and Italy attributed to him, 12 of which are signed. Interestingly, of these manuscripts, almost 1/3 were created at an earlier date, either in Italy or that moved to Italy, such as the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible and the copy of Levi ben Gershom's commentary on the Pentateuch, copied in Avignon. Joel's creation of new manuscripts, alongside his additions to older manuscripts, renders his oeuvre a unique locus to explore the position of migrating Hebrew manuscripts in the wider landscape of Hebrew manuscript production in 15th century Italy. In addition to the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible, examples of earlier manuscripts to which he added illustrations include the Stuttgart Haggadah, made in Germany in the 14th century, to which he added numerous marginal drawings, the Lawrenciana Bible, made in the mid-14th century in France, in which he added depictions of the temple instruments and numerous penwork word panels, and a Siddur, made around 1320 in the Lake Constant region, to which he added painted word panels. When examined individually, the further embellishment Joel added to these manuscripts appears unique. However, when placed in relation to his wider oeuvre, we can see that they are part of a distinct iconographic repertoire he drew on to decorate new and older manuscripts. His repeated depiction of the temple instruments is a good initial example and can be found in the Lawrenciana Bible and the commentary from Avignon. It can also be found in a further manuscript, a collection of 6 leaves that contain a colophon by Joel. Though these leaves are now lost, one can see just how closely his compositions resemble one another, for instance in the rendering of the instruments shown, and in the covering of the tabernacle. The detail here allows you to see the way he's rendered the heads of the cherubs with crossed wings across both manuscripts, thereby embodying the description of the tabernacle in Exodus, and I've put a quote here. The close similarities in these drawings is mirrored in other manuscripts made across his career, where compositions and motifs continually reappear like characters giving cameos. Such repetition is perhaps partially to do with an established pattern that Joel frequently drew on motifs circulating in the environments where he worked. For example, previous scholars have observed the inspiration he drew from the Rhenish engravings of the Master of the Playing Cards, whose likeness of a deer can be seen in several manuscripts. Further similarities between Joel ben Simeon's motifs and popular exemplars might also be seen through the drawing books of artists such as Giovanni de Grassi. De Grassi was active in the Fabbrica del Duomo of Milan from 1389 until his death in 1398. His drawings became a source of inspiration for manuscript illustration in this region. Given that Joel ben Simeon moved first to Milan and Lombardy when he arrived in Italy, it is conceivable he could have absorbed motifs from prominent long-standing influences such as de Grassi. An example of such as absorption might be seen in the leopard drawn in a Siddur, shown in the center, that he made in 1469 in Italy for Mirabilia, daughter of Menahem ben Samuel. A similar motif can on the left in a Pentateuch, which I will refer to hereafter as the Piedmont Pentateuch, copied by Jacob Diana and Netanel ben Levi Trobot in 1475 in Alessandria, and whose decoration, which I'll discuss later, was added by Joel ben Simeon. In the Siddur, a leopard leaps beneath the first word describing Rabbi Gamliel in the Haggadah, while in the Piedmont Pentateuch, 2 leopards paw at a column at the start of Genesis. The leopard's splayed legs and unfurled tails give the impression they are leaping, while their protruding tongues lend an anamorphic edge to the adjacent texts. A similarly composed leopard appears in the drawings of Giovanni di Grassi, where the leopard's splayed legs give the illusion of him bounding across the folio, with his tongue unfurled to taste the air. The examples of the deer and leopard help demonstrate the ways Joel ben Simeon's repertoire sits in dialogue with the visual culture of his surroundings. This can not only be seen in the way he may have drawn inspiration from contemporaneous sources, but also in the way he seems to have worked in scribal circles that not only further embellished migrating Hebrew manuscripts, but also employed them as models. If we look more closely at the Piedmont Pentateuch, the manuscript's main text was copied by Jacob Diana, while its Rashi commentary, Mazorah, and vocalization were executed by Netanel ben Levi Trabot. These scribes were active in the Piedmont region, mainly Cuneo and Alessandria, in the 15th century. In her article, Masoretic Manuscripts from France, Ilona Steinman observed that the Piedmont Pentateuch was copied in a format similar to earlier French biblical codices, and in particular, employed a Masoretic tradition that originated in Chinon, a town in the county of Anjou in France. She demonstrates this by highlighting a specific note, shown here, regarding the spelling of a word in Canticles 3:8, according to the Chinon tradition. Similar Masoretic notes regarding the Chinon tradition appear in the Lawrenciana Bible, including one regarding the same word, stating the letter mem should have a dagesh according to the Chinon tradition. As mentioned earlier, the Lawrenciana Bible was copied in France in the mid-14th century, and later moved to Italy, where it was sold in Alessandria in 1475, the same location and year the Piedmont Pentateuch was copied. As such, Steinman has suggested the Lawrenciana Bible served as one of the models Netanel Trabot employed for the Mazorah in the Piedmont Pentateuch. The reason why this is important to note in a discussion of Joel ben Simeon is because he was responsible for adding the illuminations of the temple instruments that I mentioned previously, as well as penwork word panels to the Lawrenciana Bible. The penwork designs in the Lawrenciana Bible, I would argue, are stylistically similar to those in the Piedmont Pentateuch, and sparks the possibility Joel also added decoration to this manuscript. This suggestion may be strengthened by further details that suggest the Lawrenciana Bible served as a model for the Piedmont Pentateuch. I am mainly thinking about the similarities in the maps to Numbers 33 and 34 in the Lawrenciana Bible and Piedmont Pentateuch. Here is a comparison between the maps for Numbers 34 in both manuscripts, where you can see the similarities in their shape. I don't have time to analyze this too deeply, but a cursory highlight to pull out is that where the content of the maps to Numbers 33 and 34 could be standard, the shape and skill with which they were executed could differ. For example, here is a comparison to a depiction of Numbers 34 in a contemporaneous Italian manuscript. Thus, while the similarity in the shape of the maps in the Lawrenciana Bible and Piedmont Pentateuch may at first seem spurious, I would argue that it augments their other similarities, including their mutual use of spellings according to the Chinon Masoretic tradition, and similarities in the style of their penwork word panels. These similarities, in conjunction with the fact that the Lawrenciana Bible was sold in Alessandria in 1475, the same place and year the Piedmont Pentateuch was made, help place both manuscripts in Joel ben Simeon's sphere. As such, it is not entirely a stretch to suggest he added embellishment to both manuscripts. This is significant because it suggests these manuscripts were worked on and passed between the same scribal circles, wherein scribes were looking to migrating Hebrew manuscripts as models and sources of inspiration. Such connections enables us to situate the illumination Joel ben Simeon added to the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible as part of a wider visual milieu. If we return to this slide, we can see that his composition is not only similar to those found in new manuscripts, like the Rothschild Haggadah, but also those to which he added but also those he added to migrating Hebrew manuscripts, such as this commentary from Avignon. The use of a similar iconographic repertoire across new and older manuscripts may not seem overly significant, but I think it indicates the degree to which Joel was participating in a wider landscape of Hebrew manuscript production, where older manuscripts not only continued to be used alongside new manuscripts, but which also received updated texts and decorations to meet the needs of their new owners. If we take a momentary step back, Joel ben Simeon's emigration to Italy and his prolific practice can be considered as part of a larger emigration of Ashkenazic communities that began towards the end of the 14th century due to decreasing economic opportunities and expulsions from urban centers. The initial waves of emigration saw Ashkenazi families settling in small and dispersed groups. Lucia Rasp has observed that this is reflected in the residence permits for Ashkenazi business owners that often had a clause permitting the holder to leave the city so they could observe the major Jewish holidays in one of the larger Ashkenazic communities. The small and spread out nature of these families led to a corresponding need for texts that enabled them to preserve Ashkenazic tradition. Such dispersion and demand might help to account for Joel's popular patronage with Ashkenazi families and his itinerant movements. Joel's career was marked by persistent movement that can be traced in part by the manuscripts attributed to him. He was in Cremona around 1452, in Padua in 1476, in Borgo Nuovo in 1479, in Modena in 1485, and in Florence in 1490. Little by little, through his travel, Joel built a reputation, completing commissions for wealthy and learned families. One of the prominent families that Joel worked for was the Rappa family, who originated in Nuremberg and emigrated to Venice after 1385, when Emperor Wenceslas canceled the debts owed to Jewish moneylenders. By the 15th century, branches of the Rappa family were living across the Veneto as rabbinical scholars, bankers, and book printers in Treviso, Mestre, Padua, and Portobufale, the same towns in which Joel traveled and worked. Between 1460 and 1470, a member of the Cohen Rappa family in Portobufale commissioned Joel to add decoration to a Pentateuch copied earlier in 1447 in Italy. For this project, Joel added 130 penwork ink word panels and full-page paintings at the start of each book of the Bible. As part of this, he added the family's emblem on several folios. I've included a printed example of the family's emblem found in a 1594 edition of the Minha Belula, which is a commentary on the Torah by Abraham Cohen Rappa from Porto. The emblem depicts two hands in the form of the priestly blessing above a raven, symbols that derive from the meanings of the Cohen Rappa name, Cohen, the Hebrew word for priest, and Rappa, the Middle High German word for raven. The emblem depicting priest's hands and a raven became a signature of the Rappa family that settled in Portobufale and Porto, who later took on the name Rappa Port to distinguish themselves from other lines of the Rappa family. In 1477, Joel was hired by another member of the Cohen Rappa family, a Menachem Cohen Rappa in Padua, to decorate a compilation of halakhic texts that he copied himself for his son and his descendants. The emblem of the Rappa family in Padua is depicted on the first folio, showing a raven-like bird above two fish. Joel's execution of these emblems for the Rappa family might give us cause to more deeply analyze the bird shown as part of the illustration added to the Rothschild Pentateuch. While this illumination has been attributed to Joel, the folio itself does not contain a colophon naming the scribe, patron, or date. It remains unknown who specifically commissioned the edition. However, I wonder if this raven-like bird in combination with the bill of sale might provide additional clues to suggest the Rappa family commissioned this illumination. To reiterate, the bill of sale informs us that the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible was sold from Akiva ben Ephraim Shatan to Jehiel ben Yuri in 1484 in Mestre. Another bill of sale, in a 14th century siddur, records that the same Akiva Shatan purchased the siddur from his brothers in 1480. One of the witnesses to this sale was Abraham ben Menachem Cohen Rappa, who later purchased the same siddur and an additional prayer book from Akiva Shatan in 1484. And that's the bill of sale. That the Cohen Rappa family acted as witness to the Shatan family's sale of the siddur in 1480, and then purchased the same siddur in 1484, suggests the families not only knew each other, but also that they circulated in the same book economy. Additional inscriptions, written by Chaim Shatan Rappa, who lived in Mestre in the 1470s, and found in manuscripts like this collection of halakhic texts, lead one to further question if the Shatan and Cohen Rappa families noted in Akiva Shatan's bills of sale were part of the same extended family. While further research needs to be done to flesh out the branches of the Shatan Rappa and Cohen Rappa families, I wonder, in the meantime, if the raven motif in the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible might suggest someone in the Shatan Rappa or Cohen Rappa family, likely Akiva, commissioned Joel to add an illumination in the same way other branches of the Rappa family commissioned him to illustrate their manuscripts. The depiction of family emblems is not unique to Joel's practice and can be seen in several other contemporaneous manuscripts owned by prominent Jewish families. For example, on the right is a siddur created in Florence around 1490 with the Gallico family coat of arms embedded in the border on the first folio. And in the center is a Bible made in Spain in 1451 to which this family emblem was added when it moved to Italy. The inclusion of family emblems in Hebrew manuscripts matched the coats of arms found in manuscripts owned by the most illustrious non-Jewish patrons, such as Lorenzo de' Medici. These emblems were an additional marker of ownership and status, at once marking up manuscripts as part of a personal library, while also enhancing the remit of decoration. In fact, family emblems did not always appear as painted coats of arms. They could be rendered in pen or even more creatively incorporated into the decoration. An example of a pen-drawn emblem of the Gallico family can be found in a copy of Joseph ben Judah Zart's Ba'al Halishon, or the Master of the Language, copied in 1474 in Italy by an unnamed scribe and decorated by Joel ben Simeon. You can see how it matches the emblem of the Gallico family found in the siddur. Here, the flowers encircling the emblem and its position as part of the word panel echo the orientation of the raven in the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible. Further emblems can be found in a 4-volume set of Jacob ben Asher's Abba Turim that Joel ben Simeon created in collaboration with the scribe Eliezer ben David Halevi Adelkint between 1479 and 1486 for Solomon ben Jehiel Halevi. To complete the volumes, Joel traveled between Borgo Nuovo, Piacenza, and Crema. The patron's emblem, depicting an eagle spliced together with a cherub pouring water, is painted twice in the first volume, shown in the center, and drawn in pen in the second and third volumes, shown on either side. The fourth volume depicts a variation of this emblem, depicting a cherub-eagle hybrid figure pouring water. In trying to identify more about the patron, it's worth noting the banderole above the emblem in the second volume. It reads Joseph Halevi. Although the Bodleian's catalog description suggests Joseph was the artist, I think it's more likely he was the patron's son due to a colophon found in another siddur copied by the same scribe, Eliezer ben David Halevi Adelkint. The colophon states it was completed in 1492 for Joseph ben Solomon. Though the colophon does not provide a surname, the presence of the name Joseph here in the second volume, which was made for Solomon Halevi and copied by the same scribe, suggests a relationship between the individuals named across these manuscripts. A design similar to this emblem can be found in this manuscript, rendered in micrography. It's found in a Pentateuch initially copied in the 14th century in Ashkenaz, and that moved to Italy where the Mizora was added. Here, the design appears at the end of Numbers and is actually a colophon indicating the scribe who added the Mizora, Solomon ben Jehiel Halevi Adelkint, and the date 1486. His name is written in the outer outline of the jug, as you can see. The similarity between the micrographic design and the emblems in the Tur manuscripts may not only suggest that Solomon ben Jehiel Halevi Adelkint was the same individual as Solomon ben Jehiel Halevi who commissioned the Tur manuscripts, but that he was related to the scribe of the Tur manuscripts, Eliezer ben David Halevi Adelkint. If this were the case, it would underscore the layers of the scribal network in which Joel ben Simeon worked, collaborating with scribes and artists to embellish manuscripts for patrons who themselves were copying manuscripts and making additions to migrating Hebrew manuscripts. Joel's creative incorporation of the family emblem in the fourth Tur volume is echoed in other manuscripts, such as the Rothschild Mazor, a manuscript Joel contributed to alongside two other artists, and that I'll speak more about later, where the Gallico family emblem of a rooster and stalk of wheat are shown as decorative embellishments throughout the manuscript, rather than as formal coats of arms. If the raven emblem in the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible might similarly be read as a family emblem, then it would place it in dialogue with the other manuscripts in which family emblems were creatively incorporated. More than this, however, it would also mark the manuscript as belonging to the branches of the Rabbah family in the 15th century, whose work as rabbinical scholars and book printers also made them avid copiers and collectors of Hebrew manuscripts, many of which had moved to Italy from abroad, or which were created at an earlier date in Italy. This includes a Hebrew Bible created in La Rochelle in 1215, and which moved first to Estella by 1348, and then Italy, where it was purchased in Venice in 1464 by the rabbi, physician, and printer Menahem Kuzi HaKohen Rappa of Piove de Sacco. A 14th century halakhic manuscript containing the work of Sephardic scholar Isaac ben Jacob Alfazi, in which is the inscription of Chaim Shatan Rappa of Mestre, a Hebrew Bible created in 1447 in Italy, which I discussed previously, with the embellishments for the Cohen Rappa family in Porto, and a 2-volume set of the Hebrew Bible, localized to Spain in the late 14th or early 15th century, and in which can be found the inscription of Menahem ben Jekutiel HaKohen Rappa of Padua, and that's the same name found in the halakhic manuscript copied in Padua. As much as the purchase of texts by the different branches of the Rappa family might have been fueled by ritual and cultural tradition, I believe it was also influenced by their position as wealthy stakeholders in the landscape of Hebrew scholarship and production. Indeed, the Rappa family's collection and production of Hebrew texts can be additionally contextualized within the position of the Veneto as a center for learning and the Hebrew book trade. Meshulam Kuzi HaKohen Rappa, for example, who purchased the Hebrew Bible made initially in La Rochelle, was a physician and rabbi who established a printing press in Piove de Sacco in Padua province. His printing press produced the first copy of Jacob ben Asher's Ara Turim, the same year he died in 1475. While Venice ultimately overtook Padua as a center for printing, Padua was home to a yeshiva led by the eminent Rabbi Judah ben Isaac Halevi Mintz, who was also an associate of Meshulam Kuzi HaKohen Rappa. Within this milieu, then, the Rappa family occupied positions as printers of Hebrew books, as well as leaders of Jewish learning and scholarship. It is thus unsurprising that the collection and commissioning of Hebrew manuscripts was important to the Rappa family, and that codices were passed down among generations. The passing down of Hebrew manuscripts can not only be seen in the halakhic miscellany copied in Padua by Menahem ben Jekutiel HaKohen Rappa for his descendants, but also the Hebrew Bible purchased by Meshulam Kuzi HaKohen Rappa. On the first folio of the Bible, for example, is an inscription noting that he gave the manuscript to his son Solomon, and his son wrote verses of thanks in return on the same folio. Other owners, possibly Solomon's son and later descendants, wrote their names on the same folio. Further instances of Meshulam Kuzi passing down manuscripts can be seen in a copy of Mir ben Baruch of Rothenburg's Responsa, which he purchased in 1472. Meshulam Kuzi's son Jacob inherited the manuscript, followed by a later descendant, also named Meshulam Kuzi. That the extended Rappa family's collections included 3 manuscripts illuminated by one of the more well-reputed Jewish artists of the day would have been a further sign of status, I would like to put an asterisk next to the passing down of these manuscripts, as there are reports that certain members of the Rappa family, such as two of Meshel Cusi's sons, were imprisoned for blood libel in the 15th century. Thus, the transfer in ownership may not always have been for purely scholarly or collection purposes. But ultimately, if the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible belonged to a branch of the Rappa family in the 15th century, possibly the Shaitan Rappa branch, and was passed down to subsequent generations, it would explain, or might explain, how the manuscript came into the possession of Gershon HaKohen Rappa and Jehiel Michael HaKohen Rappa in the 16th and 17th centuries. Thus, even if the raven in the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible was not intended as an emblem of the Rappa family, the manuscript itself is still part of a wider economy that emerged in 15th century Italy, for the enhanced decoration of manuscripts brought to Italy. Indeed, Joel was not the only artist to add decoration to migrating Hebrew manuscripts, though he is one of the few we can name. For instance, a few other well-known examples include the Wolf Haggadah on the left, which was written in the late 14th century in southern France and received new pen drawings in Italy, the Golden Haggadah in the center, which was created around 1320 in Barcelona and moved to Bologna, where it received a new title page and paintings of the emblems of the Gallico and Rava families. The second Lisbon Bible on the right was made in Portugal between 1490 and 96, and soon after moved to Italy, where it received new illuminations attributed to Aravanti degli Aravanti, the renowned Florentine miniaturist, who created manuscripts for patrons like the Medicis. These are only a few examples. There are many more migrating Hebrew manuscripts that receive textual and visual additions. The collection of migrating Hebrew manuscripts and the additions made to them are more than signs of acculturation or assimilation. They are indications of the depth to which migrating Hebrew manuscripts continue to take an active role in Jewish life, while also becoming part of the visual landscape of 15th century Italy. This can be seen more explicitly in one of Joel's final collaborations. This is the Rothschild Mausoleum, copied in Florence in 1490 and decorated by Joel in collaboration with two Florentine artists. The manuscript was given as a wedding gift, and the emblems of the groom's and bride's families, the Gallico and Norsa families, are repeated on several folios. It has been suggested that one of the collaborating artists was Aravanti degli Aravanti, the same artist that added illuminations to the Second Lisbon Bible and who created manuscripts for the Medici family. The collaboration of masters such as Aravanti with Jewish scribes like Joel demonstrates that not only were Jewish patrons commissioning work from the most accredited artists of their day, but that certain Jewish artists, like Joel, rose to such prominence that they worked in tandem with these artisans. More importantly, the decoration of new manuscripts, like the Rothschild Mausoleum, alongside older manuscripts, like the Second Lisbon Bible and the Rothschild Pentateuch, by such eminent artists, demonstrates the degree to which migrating Hebrew manuscripts were embedded in the artistic landscape of illuminated manuscripts in this period. The illustration of Moses addressing the Israelites in the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible can thus be understood as part of this wider aesthetic milieu. The bills of sale and owner inscriptions on its folios further attest to its integration in the wider economy for Hebrew manuscripts, and in particular their trade among the clients Joel worked for. As a conclusion, I'd like to step back again to think about the wider histories regarding the long lives of Jewish objects. Although this lecture has been focused on the position of the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible in the Ove of Joel ben Simeon, the discussion is connected to the wider context regarding the transhistorical and transgeographic transmission of images. Indeed, as much as Joel ben Simeon drew inspiration for his pictorial programs from the surrounding environments in which he worked to decorate both new and older manuscripts, his own work also became a source of inspiration for later artists. Evelyn Cohen has observed that a Haggadah made in the 16th century in Italy and shown as part of the exhibition catalog for gardens and ghettos bears an iconographic program very similar to that in the Second New York Haggadah and Bodmer Haggadah, both created by Joel ben Simeon. Cohen has examined this Haggadah in relation to Joel ben Simeon's Ove, noting similarities in the depictions of the four sons and the unusual rendering of little faces in a grid-like panel shown here. More interesting, however, is that the legacy of Joel ben Simeon is not confined to his artistic influence. Manuscripts made by him and inspired by his practice continue to intersect in the modern period. If we look again at this slide, we can see that not only was the 16th century Haggadah gifted to the Frankfurt Municipal Library by Baroness Adelaide de Rothschild, like the Rothschild Pentateuch, but it was also one of the manuscripts given in 1950 to the private Jewish family in New York. This modern provenance augments the stakes of this discussion regarding the continued movement and transformation of Hebrew manuscripts across historic periods. Indeed, finally, if we return to this map, we can see that the journey of the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible is part of a much larger history involving the movement of Jewish people and their manuscripts. While I have focused on the life of the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible in Italy today, each manuscript represented on this map has a rich and unique history, their lives braiding together as they moved across the Middle Ages, Renaissance, and into the modern period. It's important to reiterate the life of the Rothschild-Wittenberg Bible did not end in Italy. It moved as a unit to Poland, Vienna, and then as separate volumes, the Rothschild Pentateuch moving to Frankfurt, New York, and now LA, and the Wittenberg volume going to Leipzig and then Wittenberg, all the while sustaining changes at the hands of new readers, their continued modification attesting to their enduring ritual and artistic importance beyond the moment they were made. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. It was a wonderful lecture. And now I will open the floor for questions and comments. So please. Miriam, she's clapping. Yes. Yaki, please.
Okay. Hi, thank you first for a fascinating talk. I really enjoyed it. A question that probably is out of the domain of this talk. Could you say anything about what happened at the Sephardic communities and the Bibles there and the Agadas there? Was it similar or different?
Yeah, absolutely. There are more Sephardic manuscripts that moved from Iberia into Italy that survive actually than Ashkenazic manuscripts that moved or that I've found. And they also received additions and visual and textual. And the Golden Haggadah that I showed that received the new frontispiece and the arms of the Rava families, that is a Sephardic Haggadah. So there's a lot of very rich research to be done there. And what's really interesting is they all become part of the same manuscript landscape. So they are crisscrossing in different people. They're being acquired by the same communities that are acquiring Ashkenazic manuscripts as well.
I understand. Thank you. So this is one of the rare cases that there is agreement between the Sephardic and the Ashkenazic communities. Don't exaggerate.
What I would say is that you have book collections that include both Ashkenazic and Sephardic manuscripts. That's what I've found.
Okay, thank you.
We have a question. Please, Gary, and then we're going to chat.
Thank you, Laura. Fascinating. Really learned so much from your lecture. Thanks so much. In the beginning, did I hear correctly that I believe you said the Wittenberg volume was offered to JTS in 1905 and they declined to buy it? Is that what you said? And do you have any more information on that? Why they would have declined?
I don't know why they declined, but yes, there's a letter in the Alexander Marx archives where it was offered for sale. I'm not quite sure why they declined. Sharon might have more information for you.
I was going to turn to Sharon and ask, but that's quite remarkable. I'd never quite heard of any library, JTS or other, declining such a sumptuous volume, except obviously could have been not enough funds available. But anyway, thanks again for the great lecture.
Thank you. We have a question by Irene. How Joel ben Simeon worked? Did he have a workshop if so, where it was located. You can see the question in the chat.
Actually, I can ask a question.
Okay.
I thought that people will use the chat. Hi, thank you for the lecture. It was great, adding to the international community. I am here in Montana, the US, so it's great to see people from all around the world. So Laura, this has been awesome. And I have a question about how Joel Ben Simon work. Did he have a workshop? I mean, you mentioned that he collaborated with other artists of his time in Italy, but can you talk about his modus of operandus?
Well, he was mainly an itinerant artist, moving for work from different patrons, and not just in Italy. He also went back to Germany a few times. And a few scholars have suggested that he had like a sketchbook or like a model book that he worked off of, and that's why so many of his compositions are similar across his oeuvre. Whether he had he didn't have like a workshop in a particular city, so to speak, because he was itinerant.
Okay, and he created his own model book?
I mean, I can't say that for certain. There has been a suggestion, for example, that the leaves that I showed with the Torah instruments on them, the JTS leaves,
yes,
formed part of his sketchbook, but it's a suggestion. It's not, I don't know for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And now, please, Morrison. Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Laura, for another fabulous discussion of the Rothschild-Wittenberg volume. I'm Beth Morrison. I'm at the Getty, so I have a vested interest in everything fabulous that Laura has to say. One question I had for you, Laura, and we haven't had a chance to discuss this, I don't think, is that I always wondered, because this image of Moses appears more than once in Joel Ben Simeon's work, do you think it's possible that it served for him as some sort of calling card, and that's potentially why the Rapa family asked him to add this particular image? And if so, I've always been fascinated by your idea about the raven and the tie-in with the Rapa family and these ideas of personal emblems, which is one of the things that made me think about Joel Ben Simeon and this imagery in particular serving as kind of a calling card. But is there also any possibility that that image then had particular meaning for Joel Ben Simeon, which is one of the reasons that he sort of repeated it in his work? So just a sort of totally hypothetical thing, but I just was curious. Thanks.
So thanks for your question, Beth. So this is actually, this particular drawing of Moses addressing the Israelites at like the start of the Parashat Nitzavim is the only instance where this particular composition kind of appears, but it's very similar to his other ones. For example, of Moses receiving the 10 Commandments that he's drawn in a few different manuscripts, and also of him leading the Israelites out of Egypt, which appears in many of his Haggadot. So I don't know if we could call it a calling card per se, only because there's so many motifs that he repeats across his manuscripts. Not just this, but also, like with the deer, and there's other motifs like of a bird, and in the Haggadah, he repeats the depiction of the 4 sons. And so I think it's more likely that he had a repertoire of images that he deployed and would adapt to the particular textual context when he was commissioned. Does that answer?
I just was curious. It does. I just am curious because I'm totally convinced by your idea that this was intentional rather than a damaged page, but there were thousands of pages to choose from, and I'm just wondering, trying to figure out why he chose this particular page.
I don't know why he chose this particular page. I mean, the drawing obviously illustrates the text. And so this goes back to the idea that maybe he had a sketchbook or model book that he worked off of, and I could see a scenario where he says, like, these are the scenes that I could do for you, and they chose that scene, and this is where it fit. I suppose one of the places where it would fit, especially because he's made it so that it looks similar to the other parashot in the manuscript. You know, it's a half-page word panel. It's modeled just like the other parashot. So I think that it's possible that they chose this particular composition and then he adapted it to the place in the text he thought is best. But I mean, we also, because the page is lost, we don't know that even if there was no obvious fire or water damage, if there may have been something on that particular page that needed to be amended, or, you know, maybe we just don't know if there was anything wrong with that page. That's why it was chosen.
Thank you. Don't we have any other questions or comments from the audience?
Yes, I do have another question, if that is okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So I do one comment and one question. So about the page of Moses by Joel Ben Simon, I think that it is eloquent that this particular illumination is very, very different to the rest of the illuminations of the Pentateuch, of the Rothschild Pentateuch. The rest of the illuminations are allegorical, have allegories using bestiary images, and there is almost no human bodies and human faces. So I wonder if the Rapa, a member of the Rapa family that perhaps, or a member of the Akiva family that perhaps patron this particular page wanted a different kind of illumination that would be more explicit, and that will be Yoel's contribution. But my question is related to this comment, but not exactly, and that is the use of animals in Joel Ben Simon's illuminations, particularly the leopard with the breath out of his mouth. Did he use bestiaries images as models, or the use of dynamic animals like the leopard, you know, jumping and breathing, was something common that he did? And the second question, perhaps a little broader, is this kind of images of very active animals was common in other Hebrew illuminations?
So Joel Ben Simeon definitely drew on the environments where he worked. So, for example, like his use of woodblock prints, or the example of the playing cards and the playing cards depicting using kind of animals on each one, he definitely used as inspiration. Whether he looked to the bestiary specifically, I don't think, but you know, those images have a history tied to the bestiary. So there is that lineage. And then in terms of animals being common in Hebrew manuscripts, I mean, yes, they are a common form of decoration that appears in Hebrew manuscript illumination throughout the Middle Ages.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Maybe I have a very short one. There was a slide about the emblem of Cohen-Rapa family in Padua, and there was one with fish, and then was one with the bird. So maybe I just not understand what is the reason that is different.
Yes. So there's the Cohen-Rapa family that have the hands and the bird, and then there's the also the Cohen-Rapa family, but in Padua, that is a bird and with the fish underneath. And the reason I have surmised that it is the emblem for the Cohen-Rapa family in Padua is because the manuscript itself wasn't copied by Menahem ben Jekutiel HaKohen-Rapa in Padua. So we know that who this scribe was and who the patron was. And because it was made for him in Padua, and that's presumably his emblem, I don't know why they are different, but you do see the Rapa families, because there are so many branches, they try to distinguish themselves from each other. Like the Cohen-Rapa family in Porto changes their name to Rapa Port. instead of Cohen-Rappa, but they maintain that Cohen-Rappa emblem. So you do see them, and there's a great story about a printer in Venice who has a similar name to Meshulm Cusi working in Padua, and they take on the appellations Cusi and Viz to help differentiate from each other, but then their children also marry each other. So they kind of try to distinguish themselves in various ways, and so I would imagine that that's why their emblems have become different, but why they chose the fish in particular, I'm not sure.
I see. Thank you. If there are no other questions and comments, thank you again, Laura, for a wonderful lecture. And next week, we will have a lecture by Asa Simon Mittman about mapping Jews and Jews mapping in the Middle Ages. So, yeah, the same Middle Ages and manuscript, and invite everyone for next Wednesday at 4 o'clock at Israeli time. So thank you again for coming, and I hope a quiet night. So see you next week.
Bye. Thank you very
Goodbye.
much.
Thank you.